Hey everybody. So I wanted to talk about a comment I got recently on one of my videos. At the time, I deleted and blocked the person who sent it, but as I think about it, I really wish I had actually responded then to that person and not just shooed them away for reasons that I'll explain here. But, longtime viewers to the channel have known that I've done a lot of anti-manosphere commentary on my, a lot of anti-manosphere commentary on my channel. Now, I have never been a part of the manosphere. I have only ever had ill will and contempt for the manosphere. But there was a time when I was being strongly pressured to participate in it. I don't want to go into that at all, but really it was because I was doing a lot of very strident and disdainful commentary on issues around political correctness that they thought they had found a kindred spirit in me. I do not like the Manosphere. We do not like each other. We never have. I am persona non grata with them, and I am proud to be so. So, all of that established, though, I know a whole hell of a lot more about the Manosphere than some people, and I have seen the reality of it. And I say that because some similarly naive people may try to write into me in defense of it, saying, oh, the Manosphere is not a cult, or it's not an extremist group, etc., that it's just a series of interrelated blogs and websites where men can come together to talk about their problems and improve themselves, bro. I've heard all the bullshit. I've heard all the boilerplate. I know what it's actually about. It's an extremist group, it's a hate group, and it's a cult. And so this person wrote to me, struck me as probably being a young man that was fairly naive about the Manosphere and what it is. And he used the screen name Heinrich Himmler, which was one of the reasons I blocked him straight away. But he talked about how, he responded to one of my Manosphere videos asking me why it was so hard to believe that there are men who have been abused by women, that there are men who have there are men who need a place to come together with other men and talk about the experiences of abuse they've had with women, and why is that so hard to understand, and trying to say that that's what the Manosphere was, and the sum total of what they were providing. And I dismissed it at first, but I realize it's actually a very important question to answer. Because here's the thing. First of all, to that gentleman, if you want to elicit sympathy from people, don't name yourself after someone in Nazi leadership. Secondly, and more to the point, I understand and agree with you that there are men who have been victims of abuse by women. I'm one of them. One of the things that I like about the fact that Johnny Depp won his case against Amber Heard is that it's opened up the public consciousness in a very real way to the idea that men can be abused just like women. I also agree that there is a lot of bias and prejudice in people's minds. People try to assume that because men on average are physically stronger than women, then it must be somehow inconceivable for them to be abused by women, etc., etc. There are a lot of biases in people's mind about this. And that is something that men need to be able to come together and talk about. And I'm also sympathetic to the fact that every time men try to get together and talk about these issues in an organized way, some army of rainbow-haired gender studies majors comes and tries to shut it down. I get all of that. I get the aggravation that you feel. But going to the Manosphere for all of that is not what you want to do. And the thing is, I say this because the impression that I got was that this was a young man that was naive about what the Manosphere is. And what you need to understand is extremist groups do not recruit people by going and asking them if they want to become hateful extremist assholes. That's not how it works. What they do is they glom onto legitimate issues of mainstream discussion that are being unnecessarily antagonized by various political groups, right and left of center. For example, there is, I don't know what Mitzi wants. Anyway, there is there's a reasonable common sense discussion to be had about the issue of illegal immigration. The questions of, what does illegal immigration do to the labor market? What does what steps are being put in place to vet people that are coming into this country to make sure that they're not they're not criminals and other degenerates and undesirables and that sort of thing. These are reasonable discussions that you can have. What happens is people who favor open borders policies, extreme open borders policies and that kind of thing, unfairly antagonize the issue rather than actually coming to the table of debate. They will so you'll have people saying that anyone who would care, anyone who wants to shut down the border or control the border, control immigration to any degree, shape, or form is some kind of wild bigot and that sort of thing. The problem is that based on the various machinations that exist in public discourse and that sort of thing, different special interest groups and that sort of thing will have a greater share of the media coverage than others. There will be times that that a left-wing force dominates in the media. There will be times that a right-wing force dominates in the media. And whatever happens, they will wildly seek to demonize the other side of the issue. And what happens as a result is we lose out on the moderated discussion around an issue. We lose out on moderate people who have a dissenting point of view from that extreme pressure perspective that's currently dominating the discussion. So, for example, you have people, you'll have, to use the example of something like illegal immigration, you will have people that have a moderate opposition to a total open borders policy. And what happens is, due to being afraid of coming up against the overwhelming extremist pressure on one side, they pull themselves out of the discussion. They say, I'm not touching that. I don't want to be a part of it. And they pull out of the discussion. And what happens is the extremist faction on the other side of the discussion, the extremist faction that stands in opposition to this perspective over here, they're the ones that come in and present themselves to people who disagree with this side, the moderates who disagree with this side. They present themselves as people who, the last bastion of refuge for people who disagree with this other extremist point of view. And so what happens is, for example, there are, if you look at the history of racist hate groups and that sort of thing, they don't show up and say, hi, they ask people, hi, do you want to be a racist asshole? They don't say that. They show up and tell those disaffected moderates that they are the only bastion of hope that they have left, and they absorb them that way. And they present a much, much more moderated version of what it is they're actually about that will absorb people who say, oh, well, turns out it wasn't as wild and crazy as I thought it was. And so people get absorbed into extremist positions that way. And it's unfortunate that whoever has the loudest megaphone in the media discussion tends to have that alienating effect. Something that I encountered recently, I noticed, I didn't encounter this directly, but something that I noticed recently, there was a great stir, a great hubbub over people who were protests of people protesting a nightclub in Texas, I think in either Dallas or Austin, but it was called the Mister Club, and it's in Texas. They drew a great deal of controversy and criticism because they held an event called Drag Your Kids to Pride, where kids were brought into the very adult and very sexually oriented nightclub, Mr. Nightclub, and watched adult men parade around in drag and receive tips and their G-strings from kids that were watching in front of a stage that had a sign on it that said "It won't lick itself." It's not going to lick itself. And then they pulled kids up on stage and taught underage minors, children even below the age of puberty, up on stage and had them walk around, taught them how to parade around and dance like drag queens. It was a totally unacceptable, disgraceful display of highly predatory behavior that I thought was absolutely vile. When I watched it covered on the news, I saw various people saying that, or various news anchors covering the controversy, saying that they summarized the blowback to that event by saying that there were right-wing extremists that were opposed to the event, and right-wing extremists were the ones protesting it. It is not a right-wing extremist position to say that a sexually oriented adult nightclub should not be admitting children to watch sexually oriented drag shows and have kids teach kids how to participate in that behavior. That's not an extremist position. I mean, look, turn it around. I don't think children should go to strip clubs, to heterosexually oriented women dancing naked strip clubs. Not an extremist right-wing position at all. And so what happens is that's the kind of thing that you encounter, where anyone who has the loudest megaphone says that anyone who disagrees with them is an extremist bigot. And you have to be careful when you are finding yourself hearing that message from one side, because what's going to happen is the side that opens its doors to you is going to be the extremist bigots that want to use that as an opportunity to recruit you. They know full well that you are disaffected and hurting, and they don't care about the fact that you're hurting. They care about getting you through the door, into their club, onto their mailing list, that sort of thing. That is what they care about. So, bringing it back around, yes, one of the things I've advocated for is that we need to have an apolitical, moderate understanding of the fact that men do face abuse at the hands of women. And all of those rainbow-haired gender studies majors need to learn that talking about the abuse that some men have faced at the hands of women does not negate the reality of women being abused by men. Somehow those people have convinced themselves that men needing to talk about being abused by women and come together for healing around that is actually a front for somehow men like trading secrets on how best to abuse women, or some bizarre mental machination like that. That is very unfortunate, but you need to keep your head about you. Don't go joining extremist groups because you need to talk about the abuse that you've encountered from women. And certainly I have been abused in my life by the exact kind of women that the women that would be just the poster child for the stereotypical kind of woman that the Manosphere is warning men to be afraid of. But that does not mean that just because I've dealt with a person that fulfills a stereotype, doesn't mean that I don't need to be cognizant of the fact that there are people that are going to want to convince me that stereotype constitutes the majority of people, or constitutes everybody in a given demographic. So, to that young man who is seeing the manosphere as just a hub for men to talk about abuse that they're facing, I know you see it that way, and I know that that's how they present it to you. But what's going to happen is you're going to start getting shuffled off towards one of the various factions within the manosphere that exist as these kind of cults of personality for these men that are highly regarded within the umbrella of the manosphere. Previously, the main person you would have to worry about in that regard was Roosh V. He has taken himself more or less out of the discussion after his or out of consideration after his extreme Orthodox religious conversion. But there are still people like Vox Day. There are still people like Rollo Tomasi. These guys are extremist crackpots who have convinced themselves of some very, very, very ridiculous pseudoscientific notions about women and about men. And when they are challenged in those beliefs, they do not offer reasonable, constructive responses. They don't support their positions. They just have an army of apparatchik followers that will jump in and start accusing the dissenting voice of being a gamma male, or a beta male, or an omega male, or a cuck, or a cuckservative, or whatever they're trying to use to shout you down. They'll attack your physical appearance. They'll attack whatever they perceive to be your lack of income, whatever weaknesses they can find, because their whole defense is that they are real men, trademark. No, they are real men, and that anybody who comes against them is one of these lower breeds of men that they don't care to acknowledge, or that they denigrate, and that sort of thing. Look at Vox Day, for example. Vox Day has convinced himself that the only people who ever criticize him are gamma males, that anyone who comes against him is a lower is some kind of lower breed of man, that sort of thing. And these people, they believe ridiculous pseudoscientific crap. And what's going to happen to to Heinrich, is that if you go off and get into this crap, what's going to happen is that you're going to start expressing this crap to people who are not in the manosphere. And just like people who start expressing cult beliefs to people who are not in cults, everyone is going to look at you like you have two heads. And they're going to stop wanting to have anything to do with you. And what the manosphere is going to do, just like any cult, is they're going to tell you that those people don't appreciate you now that you're in touch with true masculinity, neo-masculinity, whatever they're calling it this week, that you're not in touch with they're not in touch with real masculinity, so they can't appreciate the real man that you've become, and all of that stuff. All of that is just cutting you off, is designed to cut you off from the people that care about you. And that's the road that you're going down. So to that young man, I hope that answers your question. And I hope you are able to pump the brakes before you get lost in all of this crazy bullshit and ruin your life as a result. There is no good to be derived from, absolutely no good whatsoever to be derived from being a part of the manosphere. What's going to happen, most likely what's going to happen is you're going to go one of two directions. Either you are someone who is going to have an easy time if you're someone who has a relatively easy time getting laid, then they will shuffle you off into the game pickup artist aspect of the manosphere, and you will join, you will be aligning yourself with the Vox Day sociosexual hierarchy, which basically it divides into alpha, beta, gamma, alpha, beta, delta, gamma, omega, with sigma being the cool, mysterious offshoot of being an alpha. And basically, they acknowledge all of these delineations of existence, but they only have any respect or patience for alphas and people they identify as alphas and sigmas. So they'll place you as an alpha or a sigma. If you don't, if you're not good with attracting women, you'll have one of two options. One will be to declare yourself a MGTOW and pretend that your lack of ability to function with women is actually some conscious choice or some noble choice that you made, rather than your own social ineptitude. So you can declare that and defer judgment that way, or or if you don't go down that road, they will just call you an omega or a gamma, which is what they did, what they tried to hang on me. They will call you a gamma or an omega, which are the bottom feeders, and they will try. It's basically their terms for incels, and they will denigrate you, and you'll just become the group punching bag. It's not none of these are healthy paths you want to go down. None of them are going to make you happier. All it's going to do is make you angry and resentful, because what these people, their stock in trade is selling you resentment porn. That's all it is. They are capitalizing on the fact that you are angry and resentful, and you may have some very, very good reasons to be angry and resentful at specific women, but what they're going to do, just like in that example I pointed out earlier, what they're going to do is they're going to take it from you having justifiable reasons to be angry and resentful at specific women and try to give you a whole host of reasons why that ought to apply to all women. And that at that point you go from being a victim to being a bigot. And I'll give you an example of Actually, no, I'm not going to keep rambling. You know what? I'm learning. I keep learning, when to stop my videos, and it's usually when I get around the 20-minute mark. Anyway, I really hope that gets out there and that's understood. If you are a young man who has been abused by women, you have every right to feel hurt and to go through your feelings and go through the damage that's caused you. You have every right to seek help and therapy, and you have every right to seek group support, and you have every right to receive the same kind of sympathy and patience and understanding and support that a woman would receive in those situations. That is totally reasonable, and that should be a completely apolitical position, and it is a shame that there are people who insist on politicizing it. But that reality does not justify going down the road of hateful extremism and cult indoctrination in your own right. So to that person out there, in the event that they should see this, what's going to happen is the more that you associate with the manosphere, it's going to go from them sympathizing with the issues that the abuse you've encountered, to them trying to get you to transfer transfer the effects of that abuse to your opinion of women on the whole. And that's what you've absolutely got to watch out for. And it's something we've got to be careful about now. As earlier I mentioned the Johnny Depp Amber Heard debacle and how that's brought a lot of public support and public awareness to this issue, which is great. But that's something we've got to look out for now, and that potential for people to become radicalized is something we've got to look out for in light of that. So anyway, I certainly hope that's helpful, and best wishes to Heinrich. Hope he changes his screen name.